We'll be starting this service. Now, please take a seat. And for those of you, this is just a gentle reminder, for those of you that have a cell phone with you today, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. We also welcome everyone that is online joining us here at the service. Officiating will be Rabbi Jeffrey Weil, Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish Congregation in Skokie.
We'll begin with the ancient ritual of Kriya. Kriya means tearing, and some of you in the first row, and Antoinette as well, have the Kriya ribbons. So if you have those, if it's comfortable for you to rise, or if you want to just sit for this, you can do that as well. You rise for Kriya, for the tearing, and you recite a blessing. So Shirley and Marty and Lee and the boys, Renee, Don, Antoinette, if you can rise, please rise. In the Bible, when something calamitous would happen to our biblical forebears, they would respond in a couple of ways. One, they would raise their voices and cry. Women, men, in an unabashed way, they would cry at times of sadness and shock. And they would also tear their garments as a sign of their exposed and raw and vulnerable, wounded hearts. The blessing that you'll recite after me in a moment acknowledges God as the Dayan Ha'emet, as the true judge, which sometimes is hard for us to accept at sad times, that God is a judge of truth. But our tradition guides us in that direction to believe such even during times of challenge. So please repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet. We say Amen. Okay, you can now tear the ribbons, tearing them upwards. Even a little tear is okay. Just acknowledging God, blessing God, ruler of the universe, as the judge of truth. And you may be seated. Adonai, ma adam vateda ehu, ben enosh vatechashvehu. Adam lehevodama, yamav ketzel over, baboker etzitz vechalaf, la'erev yimalel v'yavesh, tashev enosh adaka v'tomer, shuvu b'nei adam. These are the words of the psalmist saying, Adonai, eternal God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you would even be mindful of us? We're all of us just a breath. Our days are a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning it shoots up and is renewed, and in the evening of all of our lives it fades and withers. But God, you cause all of us to return unto dust, saying, Shuvu, return, O mortal ones. Would that we were wise, and would that we understood whither we go from here, for when we die we carry nothing with us, not our glory, not our riches. But God, you say, Shmor Tam Urei Yashar, mark the wholehearted, behold the upright. Those are the ones who shall find shalom, who shall find peace in the end. Friends, we gather today to remember, pay tribute to, and yes, celebrate the life of one who was Tam V'Yashar. He was wholehearted, he was upright, he was strong, creative, dynamic, unique, very much himself, Ken Lubowich. Death has taken our beloved Ken. Our dear friends grieve in a darkened world. There is lamentation, both in their tears and in their silence. There's loneliness. In their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends, a network of friends which this family in particular has nurtured and cultivated over the years. God, hear them and be with them. I'll read the 23rd Psalm now in Hebrew, and then we'll read it together in English. Adonai ro'i, lo exar, bino desha yarbitzeni, al meit menuchoti nahaleni nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'ma'agleit tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech v'geit salmavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shivtecha mishantecha chema yinachumuni, ta'aroch l'fanai shulchan neged tzorai, tishanta v'shemen roshi kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yudafuni kol yemei chaya, v'shafti b'veit Adonai le'orach yamim. Together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. To everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And so we speak words in memory of Ken Lubowich. There's a small stone or display in the living room or dining room right by the table at Martin and Shirley's home with a saying on it. It says, "Write your sorrows in sand and your blessings in stone." If we were to etch in stone the blessings from the life of Ken Lubowich, we would need an extremely large stone. His life contained myriads upon myriads of blessings, blessings which he shared with the world, with all of us here, and with far, far more throughout the world. Ken contained multitudes. He was creative, ever busy, vibrant, and vigorous. He was devoted to home, and he traveled the world. He focused on the family and helped strangers. He taught and he learned. And certainly while his years were not as many as we wished, he lived lifetimes. So carving all the blessings of his life into a stone, it would take a lifetime or lifetimes. But Ken was Ken, and if he chose to do such a thing, if he wanted to do that, he certainly would. He would find the right size stone, he'd find the right tools, he'd figure out the right way, he'd summon his strength, he'd gather his sons to help him, whether they wanted to or not, and he would accomplish the task. And they would then set that stone of blessings before us, and we would read the record of his life with awe. Ken Lubowich was the son of her dear friends Martin and Shirley, middle brother between Don and Renée. Young Ken, and throughout his life, and as a youngster, as a toddler, he possessed an unusual sensitivity. One day, his little sister was in her cradle crying. Ken decided that he could take her out. Maybe he was 3 years old. So he took her out and he held her. And Renée started crying some more. Shirley came in and said, "What's going on?" And Ken said simply, "She was crying." He was a consummate big brother. He wanted to help. He was protective. He also always, as anyone who ever spoke even a little bit to Ken understood, he possessed a unique perspective. I think that he possessed an artist's perspective on life. At, I think, 9 years old or so, his teacher instructed the students in the class to draw a picture. It was an assignment to draw a picture of their living rooms. So Ken went home and he drew a picture not of the living room, but of the view from the living room to the outside, what you saw through the living room window. I think that's genius. Ken didn't just think outside the box. He thought outside the whole house. The Lubowiches moved to Skokie in 1959, I believe it was, and Ken shared a room with his big brother. They shared a room in that storied house on Davis until 1973, when not in their rooms, and yes, there were occasional turf battles in the room, but Ken might follow his big brother up onto the roof. Ken also followed Don into wrestling. That was not Don's passion ultimately, but it sure became a passion for Ken. He was a consummate wrestler. He was a champion wrestler, gaining him a college scholarship. And Ken worked at it. Glenn, who lived with the Lubowiches for a time, remembers that Ken would always be wanting to wrestle Don and his friends, older kids, bigger kids even, at home because they had wrestling mats in the house, just so that Ken could strengthen up, just so he could gain strength and skills. And he was foremost, as a couple of the guys were saying a moment ago, he was a strategic and smart wrestler. He was a studier of the sport. He would break it down. He would analyze moves in a very studied way. He'd analyze the moves. He would practice them over and over and over till he really understood them with a sharp focus, until he understood the mechanics of the moves and of the sports. That's how he was with everything throughout life. On the mat, he was clever. He would also harness the momentum of his opponents to his advantage. He was smart. He was thorough. He was dogged, relentless, creative. That was Ken Lubowich. He was a man who went for it. He went for everything in a big way. But he was not, as you all know, just serious. Far from it. When he met Susan, his future sister-in-law, he greeted her wearing, some of you know this, obviously, vampire teeth. And he told jokes. He would tell me 2 categories of jokes. He'd always preface his joke saying, "This one is appropriate for the bima. This one's not appropriate for the bima." I only remember the inappropriate ones, so I can't share them with you at this moment. Shirley knows those jokes too, by the way. After studying at Normal for a while in college, Ken shifted gears, shifted directions, and he went to work. First, he worked at Morris's, the family department store, and then he helped open the Banyan Tree in Glen Ellen. And his boss, his father, acknowledges Ken's exuberance and hard work for sure, but also found him to be a bit of a rascal at times. I'm quoting Marty. And then around 1974, Ken found a new path. a new path that would take him and introduce him to worlds and to love. He began learning with Professor Ho. Professor Ho taught him calligraphy, and this triggered other interests, of course, Tai Chi, and Ken always corrected my pronunciation, Tai Chi. And then he developed and became ever deeply immersed in Chinese culture, the language, and the cuisine, which surprised Don because Don couldn't get Ken to like Chinese food as a kid, but boy, did that change. Ken moved to Ann Arbor, thank you, and to live with and to learn from Gabriel Chin. And it was not long before Ken began visiting Taiwan, China, etc. He was an avid acolyte, eager to learn. And during one trip to Taiwan, perhaps his first, maybe not, he went there so many times, one morning he was staying in a hostel with other students. He woke up early and he followed Professor Hu to a park to do Tai Chi. There, also doing Tai Chi with her master, was a wonderful young woman, Li. Ken, once smitten, was unstoppable, and he pursued Li. He would call her up, he'd invite her out to dinner or to see a movie or to do whatever around Taipei. But he wouldn't stay in Taiwan for long stretches of time. He'd have to come back home here before, so he'd have to go back and forth. But Ken was in love, and each time he would return, they would spend time together. And when they were apart, they wrote letters to each other. And this happened really over the course of years until he finally proposed. And they married. And they joined each other in love. And they joined each other's families in love as well. Ken being absorbed into Li's big family. Her mother, Li Zhen Yun Ching, and siblings, Wang Jinchun, Li Zhu, Li Dong Mao, Li Dong Fa, and nieces and nephews, Wang Yifu, Wang Yi Lang, Gua Ti Jun, Gua Zhen Yun, Chun Gi Fan, Li Pei Yun, Li Mi Ming Fang, Li Yo Rang. And they are, I ask their pardon for my pronunciation, but they are, of course, tuning in from far away. Li, meanwhile, entered the Lubowich clan. These names will be somewhat easier for me. Aunt Jeanette, Susan, Pat, all joining the family to become one big family, but not just those who were technically related. With the Lubowiches, everyone is related. We're all related, aren't we? Hundreds of others who consider themselves, ourselves, part of the family. For Ken, there's the high school friends, the neighbors, members of the synagogue, so many more. It is an impressive network. But for Ken, the whole thing ultimately centered around 8839 North Knox, where Li and Ken raised their three sons, Corey, Jamie, and Kevin. Each of them influenced by their dad, taking something that he loved and, in a sense, incorporating it into their own lives, but also, like him, each strongly independent and charting their own courses, their own journeys through life. Throughout the years at home, they'd see their dad in perpetual motion, always with a project, always doing something, planning another epic trip to China. He organized scores of them, literally scores, perhaps 78 of them. Or perhaps seeing him working to help to open Russia's pain clinic, or planning a wrestling meet. Corey, Jamie, and Kevin would dread, for so many of us, a simple question when people ask, so, what does your mother do? What does your father do? When someone asked them about their dad, they wouldn't even know what to say. What did he do? He did everything, pretty much everything. In the end, perhaps what was most rewarding for Ken Lubowich was coaching, because as a coach, he taught. And he was really, I think, a teacher in every respect, like every relationship. Yeah, besides the schmoozing and everything else, my interactions with him, I was always learning something. He had so much to share, wisdom. And he coached a lot. He coached at various places, wrestling, of course, Niles North, Rochelle Zell. This was the most meaningful aspect of his multifaceted career, for he possessed insight and wisdom, and he was eager to share it with everyone, and especially with his sons. He taught them, for instance, the importance of using the right tool. It's a great message, by the way. Using the right tool, it'll save you time and avoid frustration. The importance of seizing opportunities in life, for you do not know what any new experience might ultimately lead to. He taught that any job worth doing is worth doing well. And he taught his boys to focus and analyze situations, just like he did with wrestling, in order to surmount obstacles and conquer problems and figure things out. And he taught them also wisdom, a particular kind of wisdom which is prominent both in the Chinese and the Jewish tradition, that you never know what seemingly negative experience might end up being good luck, and what other experience might end up being bad luck. And Ken and Li also certainly taught their sons to honor elders, also prominent in both of our traditions. And they do indeed honor their elders, we see it. And also to honor diverse traditions, for the world contains multitudes, and we are all part of the whole. Ken was a relentlessly encouraging father to Corey, Jamie, and Kevin, infinitely proud of them. And they have been wonderfully devoted to their dad and to their mom. Ken taught us all, really. He taught us all strength, the importance of strength during adversity. And how many of us saw him over the last couple years drop to the ground to do push-ups? I saw it outside on the sidewalk, even deep into his illness. And he taught us the importance of friendship. So many of you, including the Geezers, his basketball group, were his friends and basketball buddies who will miss him deeply, the Breakfast Club at the Continental, and those at my congregation at Ezra Habanim, the Niles Tantric Jewish congregation, and I send love in particular from Rabbi Neil Brief and from Cantor Benjamin Warshawski. Ultimately, he taught and exemplified the most important value, which was to help others, whether that was others who were just among him, including the family or beyond. I got an example that I'd like to share with you. The last couple of years, I think right before COVID really, he gave me pictures. He knew that I was doing hospital visits. And so he gave me photographs that he took. You won't be able to appreciate them from this distance. But his photographs and more. Why did he give these to me when he knew that I was doing hospital visits? Just to bring them to the ailing, because he wanted to bring some light and color and beauty into their hospital rooms at that time. He was very proud of his whole family, Hannah, Emma, Jake, and those he wanted to help, the family and beyond. At a recent doctor's visit, when the gravity of his situation was becoming very clear, he knew what the future would bring. What did he say? What was his reaction? He simply said, "But there are still more people I want to help." Such was his big heart. He filled a room when he walked into any room. He filled a room with that heart, and he filled a room with his energy and with his light and with his smile. Write your sorrows in sand and your blessings in stone. Well, it's true. We now dwell in sorrow, but may the memory of this man, even in the midst of sorrow, be a teacher. May it teach us all to live better. May it teach us all to help further, and of course, to love more deeply. May his memory abide among us always. May his memory be a fount of blessings. Zichrono livracha, his memory for blessing. Amen. Renee, do you want to come up?
Ken and I were different in 1,000 ways, but we shared the same heart and we loved each other deeply. I was so proud to be his Mei, and he was proud of me as well. He and I sometimes referred to each other as partners in crime. He said that whenever I came up with a new idea, which is quite often, I must say, it always meant more work for him. But he said it with glee and always took on each project at full throttle. Together we compiled a family cookbook, published a collection of family stories. We co-created videos, wrote poems, organized family skits, and even had a kitchen band. If you have never heard the song L'chaim, played with pots and pans, spoons and cups, you have missed out on something really special. We never missed an opportunity to do something silly. Ken loved to record family members telling stories. His favorite was Aunt Jeanette's retelling of Uncle Sonny's breakfast encounter, fondly named Serial Killer. And even though we all groaned when he used to pull out the video camera, we are so grateful to him now for every recording we have. To be honest, Ken owes us all a big fat "I told you so" for all the times we rolled our eyes and sighed. Family was so very important to my brother. He wanted to leave a legacy for future generations. He wanted them to know our history, our ancestors, and our stories. He wanted them to appreciate Morris Department Store and to understand the difficult and brave journey from the old country to a new life in America. He also wanted them to get to know the happy chaos and funny happenings of our early years. To my wonderful sister-in-law, Lee, I am so grateful that Ken brought you to our family. What a gift you are. And to Corey, Jamie, and Kevin, your dad's most treasured of all his treasures, thank you for all you have done and all you will do to live your father's dreams. I speak for everyone in this room when I say we will surround you with our love and support you not just today, but every day after. It is what Ken would want and what you all deserve. Ken leaves behind his large collection of photographs and writings as his vision of how he saw the world. In one of his emails, he said this: "Much of my life, I looked into my camera, and at the other end was our beautiful family, or China. How lucky am I?" He also leaves behind a legion of friends and family members throughout the world, grieving the big-hearted, adventurous, relentless, crazy, loving, devoted person who had graced their lives.
Corey, Jamie, and Kevin.
So it's pretty impossible to sum up our dad. Just look at all the people who are here today, or everyone watching online from all over the world, including our family in Taiwan. My dad is someone who actively defied summary, much to our chagrin, when asked at school what Dad did for a living. And that's because he was a lifelong student, always learning something new. He would constantly remind us that you never know what's important to know, and attempted to impart his learnings to us. So here are just a few things that we learned from him.
So, our dad taught us that laughter is the best medicine. And as many of you here know, he loved to tell us jokes, regardless of the time or situation, whether appropriate or not. He taught us that jokes are a great way to lighten the mood, get people relaxed, and primed to help you. Once he heard a joke that he liked, he would tell it all the time. So, have a joke that we'll tell now. That was one of the more kosher jokes I can tell this time. All right. So it goes, a wife, being the romantic sort, sent her husband a text. If you're sleeping, send me your dreams. If you're laughing, send me your smile. If you're eating, send me a bite. If you're drinking, send me a sip. If you're crying, send me your tears. I love you. The husband, typically non-romantic, replied, I'm on the toilet. Please advise.
Our dad really loved music. He loved Peter, Paul, and Mary, he loved the Beatles, and he loved the Shania Twain Up album. But I can't remember which version, though he had all three. But embarrassingly, he also loved making us sing. We won't today, but I thought I'd read a few lyrics from a song that he never got tired of and brought him a great joy to make us sing all over China as children. I think the lyrics are as meaningful today as they were then. So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back streets? You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. All that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars break the mold.
So, our dad had many interests, but he never pushed us towards any of them. He always supported us in doing what we were passionate about. And once we did find something, he did push us to do our best, which we did and have done our entire lives. Because as he would tell us, anything worth doing is worth doing well. It's something that we've taken to heart. So I want to tell the story about when I went out for wrestling. As many of you know, he was a champion wrestler, and this was deeply important to him. And he never mentioned a thing about wrestling to us going out for it. I wanted to go out, and when I told him, he was ecstatic that he had something more to share, both for the experience that he knew that we were going to gain, and what he had to teach. So he was there every step of the way, coaching us, and cheering me on at matches. And some of his favorite matches of mine were matches that I lost. And that tells you something about him. Because usually those matches that I lost, I went out onto the mat and tried something new and got burned for it. And afterwards, I felt so bad. And I said, I'm sorry, I did that. I shouldn't have tried that there. Like, that wasn't going to work. And he couldn't be more happy. He said, there's so many mistakes in this world. Why make the same one twice? And so he loved when we would go out and try new things, regardless of what would happen. But maybe his favorite match of mine that I won was a match that I didn't wrestle at all. I wasn't able to wrestle, and so before the meet leading up to it, I did what any wrestler who knew they weren't needing to weigh in would do, was go to the buffet and eat everything they could. So right before the match started, my coach asked if I could weigh in. I said, I could try. And I looked at my dad and I said, do you really think I could do this? Like, well, we don't know. We'll see what we can do. So we went down to the pool and got to apply some of the lessons, some of the stories that I heard from his wrestling days, and try them myself, and put on a bunch of layers. We went to the pool, I was doing laps, and an hour later, drenched in sweat, I had lost 1.5 pounds and was able to make weight and weigh in, and then as it turned out, when it came time for my weight class, the other team didn't have someone who could wrestle at that weight. So I walked onto the mat, raised my hand, took the 6 points, and our team won that meet that day. One of his favorite matches.
Our dad also shared his love of photography with us that he got from our grandfather. He taught us about the rule of thirds, that the best camera was the one you had with you, and of course the most important rule of photography, people can only judge you by the photos you show them. So only show them the best ones. And he certainly loved showing people his best shots. In fact, after he discovered he could get cheap enlargements from the Costco Photo Center, he never went anywhere without an envelope full of copies like the ones the rabbi was showing. So we've also printed out a bunch of copies of some of his favorites that we must insist you take outside. But don't worry, they're only 4x6, as sadly the Costco Photo Center has gone the way of the dodo.
So we learned many lessons from our dad, even if he wasn't there. It was pretty annoying. So when I was young, I was flying to Taiwan with my mom, and I really wanted, in the catalog, they had these like model airplanes you could build. So I really wanted one, and I kept asking my mom if she could ask the flight attendant for me. My mom kept saying no. She said, if you want it, you go ask yourself. You're old enough, you can speak. So finally, I mustered the courage, and I really didn't want to, but there was a voice in the back of my head hearing my dad's voice saying, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I went and asked if I could get one of these little model airplanes, and not only did the flight attendant think I was so cute, she gave me the model airplanes, gave me extra snacks, she gave me plenty of things to my seat, decks of cards, anything that I needed to entertain myself over this long flight. And that was one of the lessons that even my father wasn't there, reminded me that if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
So our dad was full of other advice and teachings. For example, he would tell us, you always have to have the right tool for the job. He taught us to invest in the tools that we need to succeed, to do whatever we need to do, and then to take care of those tools. And this has served us well. Another rule of his was, like growing up, he would tell us that you don't have to eat anything you don't like, but you have to try everything to see whether or not you like it. And he would also say that in China, anything is possible, everything is difficult.
My dad always knew that the best things were off the beaten path, and as a kid, he took me to see Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind, which is a long-running show in Chicago that consists of 30 short plays in 60 minutes, performed at 11 p.m. above a funeral parlor, where you roll a die to see how much tickets cost, and if the show sells out, they order pizza for the entire audience. One pizza for the entire audience. That first outing with him, there was a short play on the menu called Soliloquy. So they started that play, the lights went out, and a single spotlight came up on my dad, sitting next to me, and the whole audience sort of held their breath, not sure what was about to happen. And with all eyes on him, my dad, without hesitation, launched into one of his favorite stories about being in the jungles of Malaysia. The audience started laughing. This guy was definitely making this up. But he kept going with no intention of slowing down, so they slowly faded the lights on him.
Yeah. My dad was a master storyteller. Before bedtime, he was less inclined to read us books and more inclined to tell us stories about his adventures. Even as a kid, we noticed this about him. And when I was little, I called it out, telling him that he told so many stories because when they grew up, they hadn't invented books yet. And he wore the badge with pride as being older than books.
Above all else, our dad taught us not to take anything, or especially ourselves, too seriously. Back in September, our Aunt Renée was talking to my dad, as they often did, and at one point my aunt said something along the lines of, our family is just one clown short of a circus. And that really made him laugh, to think about all the colorful characters in our family and extended family. And so he really latched onto that phrase and repeated it a lot, all the time. But it wasn't untrue, so, what's wrong with that? No? So here we are before you, 3 clowns who learned from the very best. Now, for everyone who's jealous right now, outside there are also a bunch of clown noses that you can grab, so you can wear one as well. I think it would make him laugh. And they're ones for you because if you knew my dad and are here today, he'd consider you part of our big circus family as well.
לידה היא ראשית, ופטירת תכלית החיים כמסהם, כהליכת צמיחה משלב לשלב. Birth is a beginning, death is a destination, life is a journey, a going and a growing from stage to stage. Life is indeed a journey, and the life journey of Kenneth Mark Lubowich has now reached its sad conclusion. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken. Blessed be the name of the eternal God. And so, O God, into your care we entrust the spirit of Ken Lubowich, for you keep faith with your children in death and in life. Sustain all of us, O God, that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead for us, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, O God, will be with us as a loving friend in whom we put our trust. You are the light of our lives and our hope in eternity. If it's comfortable for you to rise, please do so for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Amatzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezoha Harakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Katriel Mordechai ben Meir HaKohen, Besar Leah, Shahalach Le'olamo, Baal Harachamim Yastirehu, Beseter Kenafav Le'olamim, V'yitzor b'tzor ha'chaim et nishmato, Adonai Chonachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom, Al mishkavo, V'nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence with the holy and the pure who shine like the glow of the heavens, to Ken Lubowich, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and within the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Amen. You may be seated. Let me make one announcement. One other announcement. In addition to clown noses, we have stones, little rocks that Renee has furnished. The family encourages you to take a stone with you. The stones will be available. You'll see them. Take a stone with you. In a sense, you'll be taking Ken with you on one last journey, and place that stone, place him wherever you feel and want to feel Ken's presence, wherever you want him to be. Thank you.
So the stones and the red noses are on the front table. As you exit, you'll see them. If you're coming back here for the Shiva, they will also be available. The interment will take place at Memorial Park Cemetery located in Skokie. If you're driving with us in procession, please obtain an orange funeral safety sticker to be placed on the inside portion of your front windshield, as well as a magnetic flag to be placed on top of your vehicle. And please use your bright headlights and emergency flasher lights while in procession, and stay as close as safety will allow to the car in front of you to avoid large gaps, especially dangerous going through intersections. The Shiva will be observed back here at the chapel, the North Chapel at our 8851 Skokie Boulevard here in Skokie, following the service until 3 p.m. And then Shiva will resume on Tuesday and Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 4545 Davis Street in Skokie. And just as a reminder, masks and vaccinations are required. All this information is listed in the service folder that you received on your way in. We did run out, so we did print more, and so they are available as you exit or when you come back for the Shiva. It also has the memorial contributions, which are to a cancer charity, to Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish congregation, or if you want to do something else that's a little unconventional, unusual, or fun, Ken would have liked that as well. I'll ask at this time to everyone and rise in silent tribute to Ken as we escort his casket from the chapel.